Hi everybody, my name is Liam Martin from Time Doctor, and I'm really excited to be able to share the next 20 minutes with you where we're talking about the war for talent in the BPO industry, or more broadly, the outsourcing industry. We've identified 5 things that you're probably actually doing right now and 5 ways to actually fix those problems that you've got inside of your business. Again, we have a little bit of a background in this. Not many people really understand where remote work was pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, 4% of the US workforce was working remotely. Post-pandemic, about 45% of the US workforce is working remotely, and that number is only going up. So the new reality is that there is a completely new war when it comes to talent, particularly in the outsourcing industry. And I wanted to kind of go through that very quickly with you. This is a super tactical talk. If you have an iPad or if you have a notebook or anything like that, get your notes out so that you can write this all down, because I don't know whether or not this will actually be, this recording will be made available to you. So let's get into it. So as a technology company that's been building and perfecting time tracking and employee monitoring software since 2012, we have nearly a decade of experience working directly with BPOs of all types and sizes. We've learned from the very beginning that talent acquisition, retention, and attrition are a crucial element for success inside of the BPO and the broader outsourcing community. But in today's pandemic, post-pandemic labor market, we're starting to hear from clients and BPO industry experts that the difficulties in finding and keeping top BPO talent have become exaggerated. At Time Doctor, we're remote work advocates who are passionate about using technology to gain the type of workday insights that can accelerate the world's transition to remote and flexible work. So today, we want to share some of the insights we've gained about the war for talent that's been heating up in the BPO industry. First, we'll talk a little bit about what's been going on with talent in the industry. Next, we'll examine the 5 major mistakes that BPOs are making with talent. For this, we actually have some really compelling data that we were able to gather in a work from home versus in-office experiment that we ran with one of our top BPO clients at the start of the pandemic. And finally, we're going to give you some practical takeaways from our discussion. We'll identify 5 ways to gain a competitive advantage with talent right now into the future. But before we get into that, let me give you 2 minutes on me. My name is Liam Martin, and for those that didn't know, my day job is working at Time Doctor and Staff.com, where we help empower remote teams to collaborate and work remotely all around the world. I'm also the co-organizer of the Running Remote Conference, which is the largest conference on building and scaling remote teams. And we actually have workers in over 40 different countries. Time Doctor is a work insights company. It was launched in 2012. It's basically dedicated to accelerating the world's transition towards remote work. And we have customers in 100 countries. We have 50,000 customers. We have 300,000 users, and we've grown 10x year over year. Obviously due in part to the pandemic, but also because we actually have really good time tracking software. Also, I am unapologetically Canadian, so if you hear a few A's throughout my presentation, I do apologize. Now, talent acquisition and attrition, I mean, those are really the 2 major things that you look at in any business, but particularly in any BPO. So the challenge of finding, hiring, training, and keeping top talent is one of the biggest challenges to operating a successful outsourcing company. And the war for talent in the outsourcing industry has been waging, honestly, since the beginning. Not only is it extremely difficult to do well, but it takes time, energy, and resources to be able to execute a proper talent acquisition and retention strategy. Hiring and training is costly, and it really never ends. I know that probably a lot of you are thinking that same thing. Like, of course, Liam, of course it never ends. But honestly, it's a very difficult process. I mean, and to me, talent loss can be absolutely devastating. You can work with someone, get them trained up for 3 to 6 months, and then they just take another job at another BPO, which can completely destroy department or even, in some cases, company operations. So finding top talent is essential to the growth and success for any BPO, KPO, or outsourcing company, no matter what kind of clients they work with. We found data showing attrition rates between 40 to 50% for the BPO industry on average. And that's one of the highest rates across all industries. Funnily enough, the only other industry that has a higher attrition rate is the retail industry, which I believe has about a 50 to 60% attrition rate. But this is nothing new. If you're here, you probably already know that. And it's a constant battle. And it's one of the things that outsourcing leaders say keeps them up at night. We certainly don't need to actually teach you anything about this, but we just want to kind of lay out the lay of the land. So the pandemic effect. Well, listen, today's labor market is even more extreme than it was pre-pandemic. The pandemic has made the labor market even more difficult to navigate than honestly ever before. Individuals have left the job market altogether. They're no longer working. Many people made career changes. They either had an upskilling event or they actually got a new interest and transferred over to another job. And they're putting more focus on work-life balance. They're spending more time with family and they're eliminating the commute. Remote work is definitely a more friendly work-life balance type of experience. So they're evaluating the priorities. Where do I want to live? When do I actually want to work? This is happening inside of your organizations right now, and they're seeking pay and benefit increases that they really weren't seeking pre-pandemic. Most of all, there's been a remote work revolution. Remote is meeting the needs of workers in a way that on-site honestly can't. There's actually a study from Buffer that found that 94% of employees who started working remotely as a result of the pandemic selected that they would like to work remotely for the rest of their lives. So remote work has honestly changed the game. Working from home during the pandemic wasn't perfect, but as everyone settled in, many people started to enjoy it and even prefer it. There was no more commute. There was no more time with, there was a whole bunch more time with family. There was major cost savings and there was better work-life balance. Lots of benefits of remote work have honestly made many people decide they don't actually want to go back to the office setting. And for those that choose remote, they honestly have way more options than they had before. And they have access to opportunities all around the world. So it's now not just looking at, okay, well, what's the best job opportunity in Barcelona? It is, what's the best job opportunity in Spain, in the EU, and in the world? But the benefits of remote work can apply to you, the employers, as well. Employers, specifically those that have traditionally operated as strictly on-site companies, have seen major benefits as well. There's a huge cost savings, there's global workforce advantages. The point is, the positive impacts of remote work go both ways. Companies can benefit just as much as their employees. Many businesses are starting remote, and when it comes to talent, now they have access to a global talent pool. The big thing that I need to be able to reinforce with everyone is that you can't just stick your head in the sand with regards to remote work. Remote and flexible work options are coming for everyone's business. This is going to be a complete game changer. It already effectively has been, but for those that don't really understand this and thinking to themselves, okay, everyone's going to go back remotely, you can do it for a short amount of time, but you're going to start to see serious attrition start to raise its head very, very quickly. I would probably say by the middle of next year, you're probably going to see a 50% higher attrition rate than you did pre-pandemic. The way we see it, it's time for a change. As the pandemic recedes and things go back to normal, basically everything opens back up, and outsourcers attempt to go back to business as usual, they will have a rude awakening if they don't make some changes very, very quickly. The remote work genie is honestly out of the bottle and it's not going back in. It has become harder than ever to not only find talent, but to actually keep it. And if you don't believe us, just ask HR recruiters. I'm going to say that many of you are probably doing it wrong right now, but there's a golden opportunity here. You have to embrace the changes and gain a competitive advantage in your industry by acknowledging what isn't working and implementing some new approaches to talent acquisition and retention. Since the pandemic launched this remote work revolution that we're seeing right now, lots of industries, not just BPOs, have been making these 5 mistakes when approaching talent. They're not offering employees or candidates any flexibility. They're limiting themselves to a specific location. They're relying strictly on management by presence. They're ignoring work-life balance by putting their SLAs above their people. And they're not measuring and focusing on some of the most important talent metrics. Now, let's just unpack these. First, BPO and outsourcing companies in general have been hesitant to offer the flexibility of schedule that post-pandemic workforces have indicated they actually want. A big part of what the workforce is looking for right now isn't just strictly remote work for the sake of remote work. It's the ability to bring some flexibility to their actual work life. Everyone is different, and there are lots of different ways that people like to work. For example, some people do their best work in the morning and others do their best work in the evening. I know I'm more of an evening person. Some people are really comfortable collaborating remotely, while others crave face-to-face collaboration. Some people can finish all of their weekly tasks in 3 days. Others like to spread their work out across 7 days. The point is, the actual workforce of today and tomorrow wants the ability to work when they do their best work. So for whatever reason that may be, we've seen that BPOs have been resistant to creating work environments that support this kind of flexibility. Of course, there are some instances where that type of scheduling doesn't actually make sense for the BPO industry, and honestly, their hands are tied, but there's a major opportunity for those that can get creative and offer flexibility as a draw for top talent. Next up, any BPO that plans to remain on site only indefinitely into the future and is requiring that all staff live in a particular city or within a certain distance of a physical office space is limiting their ability to attract and retain top talent. That's not an option. That's honestly just a fact. Some people might say, okay, sure, but I'm in a big city. There's plenty of work to go around here in Bangalore or Delhi or Mumbai. But the problem is that more and more companies are opening themselves up to accept work from people around the world. As we mentioned before, what we learned during the pandemic is creating a boom in remote work around the world. And as more companies embrace it, there will be more global opportunities for the people in Bangalore, Delhi, and Mumbai to actually consider. So in other words, as opportunities open up around the world and the workers in your city take those opportunities, your local workforce will diminish. Industry experts that we've talked to about this have told us that the competition for mid to high value positions has doubled, and time to recruit has also doubled. This is a huge KPI that directly impacts both the bottom line and the ability to hit SLAs. Filled is billed, as they say. Imagine if the cost to hire doubles, or if your hiring time doubles. That's not good for business. One of the other things that holds BPOs back the most is this idea that the only way to effectively manage a team or workforce is through presence or line of sight management. Basically, that management need to be able to see their staff in order to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. If they're there, I know they're working. The truth is that just showing up doesn't mean you're actually doing anything useful. Research shows that businesses lose $600 billion a year to workplace distractions, and that remote workers are 30 to 40% more productive than their in-office counterparts. Among performance-based remote work statistics in 2020, 94% of surveyed employers report that company productivity has been the same, 67% or higher, 27%, since employees started working from home during the pandemic. In fact, in a FlexJobs survey of more than 1,200 people who worked remotely during the pandemic, it was found that 51% report being more productive working from home, and 95% say productivity has never been higher or the same while working remotely. So the old school idea that just because a manager can physically look over and see their staff guarantees they're working, that honestly isn't the reality, and we have some of our own data to be able to prove that. We actually conducted our own study on performance and productivity when working remotely compared to an in-office environment with one of our BPO clients. And we gathered tons of data using our software and found that computer activity was hugely significant when it comes to determining performance levels. 4 out of the 13 most statistically significant indicators of performance that we looked at were related to mouse and keyboard activity. Those indicators were the average number of mouse clicks per 3-minute time period, mouse movements per 3-minute time period, keystrokes per 3-minute time period, and the share of 3-minute chunks with no keyboard activity. So basically, agents that are less active on their mouse and keyboard are lower performers. All of that makes perfect sense. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is that the method in which you measure this type of computer activity is much more powerful than whether or not agents are working from home or not. So you could literally measure this data, whether they're in the office or out of the office. And this is the kind of information that you simply can't get just by looking over someone's shoulder or out onto the office floor. It takes technology. And when you have these types of analytics, it doesn't matter where your agents are, because you'll be able to pull the data and see who isn't meeting expectations. That way you can coach against it, whether that's in person or remotely. You have the hard evidence of low activity rather than just a gut feeling. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, that same company also found that there was a 56% decrease in unproductive time when working at home versus in the office. There was a statistically insignificant change in social media use, less than 1%, and there was a 10% increase in NPS after switching to remote operations. So not only did they gain confidence in their agents' ability to actually work from home, they also had tangible data-backed evidence that helped them advocate for their remote team when negotiating and managing SLAs with the new and existing clients. Another mistake is that too few BPOs put a real emphasis on supporting a strong work-life balance among their workforce. Working too many hours, working on the weekends, working on holidays, working in an understaffed environment, or being overburdened with too many tasks, all these things led to poor work-life balance, but are often ignored because leadership believes they are necessary to hit SLAs. That type of mindset is what causes burnout and drives top talent away, especially right now when they have so many other, honestly, really fantastic options to consider. Metrics are a huge part of managing a successful BPO. I'm not here to tell you that you're not paying attention to the wrong metrics or that these methods are inherently flawed. What we see is that BPOs can fall into the habit of putting a disproportionate emphasis on certain metrics that have a similar impact on performance, productivity, and talent than necessarily simply because that's the way it's always been done. When it comes to talent, there are certain metrics that will honestly help you evaluate much more effectively than others. The right metrics will show a wrong hire faster or the right hire faster. What makes outsourcing staff good at their job as it applies to their workday goes way beyond average handle time or cost per call or occupancy. So focusing solely on those vanity metrics is going to set you up for failure in the future of work. BPOs should be asking themselves, what does good talent actually look like on a week one, month one, or year one, etc. basically basis? That way you can get a much better idea of who might stay, who might go, and what type of candidates you should be looking for to get the best chance of retaining talent and reducing attrition numbers. The good news here is that there's a major opportunity right now for outsourcing to be leaders of change and gain a competitive advantage by tweaking a few key aspects of the way that we look at talent. We think outsourcers can address each of those 5 mistakes we mentioned by working at will, working from anywhere, working smarter, working with heart, and working with talent strategy. The first thing that BPOs can do right now to put themselves in a better position to find, hire, and retain top talent is to create a work environment that gives employees more flexibility of schedule. We identify not being flexible as a mistake that's holding outsourcers back. So the solution is to be flexible. I want to be clear here. I'm not talking about turning over the controls of your employees and allowing them to actually just work whenever and however they want. I'm talking about building an infrastructure that encourages and supports employees working at the times that work best for them. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. If your staff is hitting their metrics and getting the job done, do you really care what day and time they're actually doing it? I personally don't. If limiting your available talent pool to, let's say, a 50-kilometer radius from your company offices is holding you back from bringing on and keeping the best possible talent, then unchain yourself by opening up your employment possibilities. Whether you start out with hybrid work or make the full transition to remote, giving your workforce the ability to work from home or a co-working space or from their sick parents' home or even from their home country is honestly incredibly empowering. Imagine one of the most productive employees who has been working from home throughout the pandemic, has a family emergency, and needs to leave your local city to go be with relatives and take care of a family member. How do you think they would feel if you told them that you couldn't go? If you told them that you didn't feel they could remain productive if they left city limits? Offering work from home anywhere sends the message to your staff that your priorities are output and results, not simply location. It shows that you are willing to let them move about the world as free humans as long as they satisfy their work commitments wherever that might happen. And that's not to mention the additional qualified candidates you'll be able to attract from around the world. Allowing work from anywhere means that you can hire any person on planet Earth that meets the requirements of the role. That should honestly feel really empowering to you. You can't find your talent in Bangalore. What about Manila? What about Dublin, Ireland? What about Sao Paulo, Brazil? Do you honestly really care where your staff is located if they can actually get the job done? Management by presence is a myth, and an outdated one at that. So stop putting so much emphasis on it and work smarter instead. The amount of technology that companies have access to these days help create a productive work environment, whether on-site or remote. It's enormous. No matter what kind of outsourcer you are, no matter what your goals and KPIs and SLAs are, there is technology out in the world today that will more effectively manage those things than any one person ever could. So work smarter, not harder. Take advantage of automation, take advantage of software and technology that allows you to give your employees what they need to actually be happy and fulfilled, while also getting the type of consistent and productive work that you need to succeed as an outsourcer. I'm not suggesting you get rid of managers altogether, although probably a lot of employees would agree with that, or that interpersonal communication is invaluable, but I think BPOs that embrace things like asynchronous communication and project management will be much better positioned in the future to create the type of environment that top talent will seek out and stick with. Speaking of employee happiness, remote work completely changed the way that millions of people view work-life balance. They're putting much more value on being able to spend time with their families, being able to take care of themselves, being able to truly enjoy time off and holidays, not having a stressful commute every morning, even just being able to establish days, times, and situations where they want to be empowered to completely unplug from work and focus on living a good life. For those people, work-life balance isn't just a nice to have, it's going to be a requirement for them moving forward. And BPOs that ignore work-life balance and take advantage of the workforce in the pursuit of hitting SLAs at all costs are going to have a very difficult time finding and retraining top talent going forward. Things like mental health days, unlimited PTO, and flexible work hours will become much more attractive to the workers than snacks or coffee in the office. For BPOs, there's an opportunity to show your employees that you care as much about them as people than any metric or client. Doing things in a truly genuine way is going to set you apart from the crowd, position you as a place that top talent wants to join, and instill a sense of loyalty among the workforce that will reduce attrition. And finally, work with a strategy that focuses on talent as the most important asset that you've got. BPOs should be asking themselves, what does good talent actually look like on week one, month one, year one, etc., as it relates to employee opinion, happiness, and productivity. That way you can get a much better idea of who might stay, who might go, and what type of candidates you should be looking for to give you the best chances of retaining talent and reducing attrition numbers. Listen, KPIs are important, output is important, but employee satisfaction is much more loosely tied to talent wins than any of those vanity metrics. The best way to stay on top of this is to strategically measure the things that matter most when it comes to acquisition and attrition. And no matter what your employees are looking for, there's technology that can help you execute on this. One really cool example that you can find, there's an AI recruitment tool where you can actually you can use quizzes, surveys, testing, even run Q&A over video to gather data on candidates and then run that data through machine learning that will give you insights on which potential hires are the best fit for your organization. Basically, who is going to be productive and happy working with you. Being able to leverage this kind of data and insights they provide is so important to us that we actually just finished rolling out a new work-life balance widget that can automatically flag potential attrition risks and bring them to your attention. So, thank you very much for your attention. Again, if anyone else wants to be able to check out timedoctor.com or really ask us any questions about remote or hybrid work policies, we're always here to be able to answer them. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hopefully will see you again.